Well, it's about that time again. Election season is coming into full swing. Soon you're going to be seeing ads and signs everywhere telling you who you should and should not vote for. One of the big questions today that a lot of people are asking is whether or not evangelical Christians should or should not vote for Trump. If you take to the internet, you will see websites such as Christianity Today calling for the impeachment of Trump, or you will see news outlets claiming that evangelical Christians should not support Trump because he is the opposite of everything they stand for. You'll see many people on Twitter making claims that Christians are hypocritical by supporting Trump and that he is the opposite of what their beliefs state, and some even claim that some of the Democratic candidates are more in line with Jesus' thinking and teaching than Trump is. So, let's dive into that and take a look and see if these claims are actually valid, and let's see if evangelical Christians should vote for Trump. Now, keep in mind that when going through this, we're coming at this from an evangelical Christian perspective on whether or not they should vote for Trump. So, to get at what the people claiming they should not say, is they claim that Trump is sexist, racist, arrogant, and basically has bad character overall and is a terrible person. And they propose that he is the opposite of everything that a Christian stands for, and then often they will counter-propose that the candidates on their side are actually more in line with Jesus' teaching and more in line with biblical principles than Trump is. Now, here's the problem with what they're saying is a lot of times claims are made about him that aren't based on facts and truth. But let's say a lot of these things were true and you had to go off of that. That still doesn't even prove that you should not vote for him, because if you look at the Bible, God ordains 3 different institutions. You have the government, you have the family, and you have the church. Now, each one has different roles. And here's the catch, is that the role of the government, which is what the presidential position entails, it's part of the government, it's not part of the church or the family. It has different responsibilities than the family or the church does. So, a lot of these claims that the other side is making that Trump doesn't, follow the Bible, we're not picking a head of the church, we're not picking a family member, or he's not part of our family. We are picking a president of the United States, which is in the role of the government. Now, what you have to examine then is what the role of the government is. So the role of the government is to protect the people and protect their rights that God gave them and their freedoms, and allow them to do the work he has in there to do. So when you're picking a president or voting for a president, you have to consider who is going to best put forth policies that protect Christian values and protect religious liberty and freedoms and do what the role was intended for. So then you, instead of looking at how a person makes you feel and how a candidate makes you feel, if they seem arrogant or if they seem nice, if they seem sexist or racist, do their policies reflect that? If all the policies reflect all these bad things and infringe upon your rights, then yeah, they're not a good candidate. But if that's just how their personality seems and their policies do not reflect that, and the policies are actually beneficial, then you need to take a step back and think for a second and not necessarily jump the gun and say you won't vote for them. Here's a tweet that kind of embodies what this side's argument is, in that Trump is the opposite of what Christianity is, and that the Democratic candidates fall more in line with Jesus' teaching, so to speak. So it starts off, she says that she's pretty sure that the Jesus that she read about in the Bible is not the same one that the maggots are rooting for. Well, first off, says she read the Bible. That's interesting because maybe she just read parts of it or didn't read the whole thing because she definitely missed some stuff. But let's get into it here. She says if Jesus came back today, he wouldn't recognize his followers and that the news would vilify him and call him a dangerous radical socialist, yada, yada. Okay. Then goes over here on the right and starts to claim exactly who Jesus was and how he was in the Bible, since she's read it, right? She's read it all. She's got it down. She's got it memorized. She knows what's up. All right. So let's start here. Jesus was a radical, nonviolent revolutionary, okay, who hung around with lepers, hookers, and crooks. Okay. Starting off okay here. He was those things. He hung out with those people. He was an American. That's true. I don't know anyone that claims he was American, but let's throw that in there. That's a good point. You know, he was an American. Maybe some people don't know that. He never spoke English. Well, you know, pretty sure most people realize that too based on the time period and location that he was in. Now, here's where it starts to get interesting. This is where she starts to, I think, maybe she missed some parts of the Bible. I don't know. We'll see. She says he was anti-wealth. Well, that's not quite true now, is it? If you read through, nowhere was Jesus anti-wealth. In the Bible, there is a clear line drawn that putting wealth above all else and the love of wealth and making that your primary goal is wrong and is bad and is evil. But he was not anti-wealth in and of itself. In fact, there are many times where he blessed people and people became prosperous because they were responsible with what they had and then they were able to give more. He's not anti-having wealth. It depends on what your goal is and what you plan to do with the wealth. So you can't just put in a simple statement that says Jesus was anti-wealth, because he was not. He was not. He was fine with people becoming prosperous and putting in work and making money. Now, he does tell people what they should do with that, but he doesn't condemn actually making money. He condemns pursuing money above all else and putting it above him. So that's the first one she missed there. Let's go on to the next one. Says anti-death penalty. Well, the topic of capital punishment does fall under a section in there. She can read that and look that up. Let's see. Anti-public prayer. He was more anti praying for people to see. So praying to God in public wasn't bad. It's the way the people were praying that he was criticizing was bad. They were doing it to be seen and make a show of themselves. So if you're doing that, yeah, that's wrong. But if you're sincerely praying to God and it's with a group of people, that's not a bad thing. She goes on to say, but he was never anti-gay. Well, Jesus did claim to be God. And in the Bible, God does say that it is wrong. Now, I understand the way they're trying to frame it. It's the whole argument that a lot of them like to make is that Jesus hates gay people, and that is nowhere near true. He condemns all sexual immorality, and that falls under that category, whether it's sex outside of marriage, with a man, with a woman, with both, with anything. He condemns it as wrong. So let's go on. There's so much more here. So much more. She says that he never mentioned abortion or birth control. You know what? You're right. He never did mention abortion or birth control because they didn't need to create new terms to describe what murder is. It was pretty simple just to call it murder. That's as easy as it was back then. So you're right. He didn't talk about abortion or birth control. It was back then, it was just straight up you killing a baby. Never called the poor lazy.
It is important to note the order, though. Just because someone is poor does not mean they were lazy and thus became poor. But he does make points about how being lazy can lead to that. So, in effect, not everyone who's poor is poor because they're lazy. People have hard circumstances placed on them. There are troubles and trials that everyone goes through in life, and that's why Christians are in a position to give money to the people that need it. And that's what he advocated for. He advocated for helping the poor. But he did not call all poor people lazy. To be clear, the point is that if you are lazy, then it can lead to you being poor and not prospering.
Okay. Never justified torture. Yeah, I don't think he was down for torturing people. Never fought for tax cuts. Yeah, what he said about taxes was basically pay them if your government institutes them, give to them what is theirs. Never asked a leper for a copay. Well, that is because he could do miracles and heal them when he touched them. It seems like she's taking a shot at healthcare with that one, I think is what she's doing. And the whole thing with that, people say it's a human right and that people shouldn't have to pay for healthcare, but you can't claim that either. That is not in the Bible because someone's got to pay the people that are providing the healthcare, right? They have to be paid for their job they're doing. They can't do it for free. They have to be paid. Someone's got to pay them. Forcing someone else to pay for that's got to come from the rest of the population that can afford it, right? Forcing them to pay that is not the right way of doing things, and we'll touch on that here in a little bit. That falls under the whole socialism thing, but I want to finish getting through this awfully long tweet that gets so much stuff wrong. And he was long-haired, I mean, potentially, yes. Brown-skinned, most likely. Homeless, community organizing, anti-slut shaming, Middle Eastern Jew. Okay. So, if you're trying to use the Bible to tell Christians who to vote for, and you claim you've read it, but you're not calling yourself a Christian, and you're trying to use their own beliefs against them, just stop, because you're missing a lot of the stuff that's in there. Unless you want to go read the whole thing and actually read it and pay attention to what it says, by all means, go do that. I would love that. But don't just pick phrases from it that you think support your point and then go online and post some sort of meme or, rant about how that Christianity is being hypocritical by voting for someone that's policies fall in line with what they believe. Because what you're saying, if you're trying to say, hey, Christians, follow the Bible, you're actually doing the opposite of the point you're trying to make. So actually, I'm helping you out a little bit here. You're actually, if you tell them to go look at the Bible and follow what Jesus said and what the Bible says to do, they're actually not going to end up voting for the candidates you want. Many of these platforms that you want violate what the Bible teaches, and it's not going to be good for Christians to vote for them. Not at all. So we find ourselves back at the original question that I started the video with. Should evangelical Christians vote for Trump? Well, going through what we've talked about here, I can tell you that we should not vote for any of the current Democratic candidates. That is for sure, because their policies do violate what the Bible teaches. Well, that leaves us with the current president, Trump, and if we should vote for him. Now, if there's another candidate, maybe, but his policies do not violate what the Bible is teaching. Now, his behavior and the things he says, yeah, not all Christian, nor is any other person in the entire world. But like I said, he's in the role of a government leader. And while you may not like him, and while you may not approve of the way he says things or the way his personality is, or you dislike him as a person, once again, you're picking a president. And we went over what their role is, right? Right. If you're faced with the choice between one of the Democratic candidates and the current sitting president in the next election, you have two choices there. You could also say, well, I'm just going to sit home and not vote, kind of hopping up on a high horse, saying, I'm just going to stay back from this one because neither honors God. By sitting back and not taking action, you are still making a choice that in the end could result in an anti-biblical candidate coming into office. So, like I said, while you may not like the individual, you have to look at what that candidate is going to support and if they are going to protect your rights or not. So please remember, when you're voting for a president, you're not picking out your pastor, you're not picking out, a church leader, small group leader, you're not picking out, your best family friend to hang out with you and go on vacations. You're picking a president. And like I said, the president has a different role. So that's going to sum up today's video. I thank you all for taking the time to watch. I'd appreciate it if you leave a like, subscribe, or even leave me a comment. I'll get some feedback to you. I appreciate any feedback that you have for me. And remember to go out and vote this season. Thanks, guys.